Joining us on the line now is Captain Gary Griffith, no stranger to our frequency, and the political leader of the NTA. Captain Griffith, good morning to you, and welcome back to the People's Platform.
Hi, good morning. Always my pleasure.
Captain Griffith, thank you for being with us this morning. There have been a number of developments as it pertains to the political front. The NTA has launched its campaign for the local government elections 2023. If I'm not mistaken, correct me on the figure, the NTA has fielded 31 candidates. Is that correct?
Correct.
Captain Griffith, you have announced that the NTA will be in a coalition with the UNC. Let's begin there. Why engage in a coalition with the United National Congress?
Well, listen, I was a military officer. Every single thing I do, it's very tactical, it's very strategic. You analyze the situation and you look at going down the road 3 steps ahead. The data is there, and this I've been used to the vast majority of the country. So let's just do the maths pertaining to elections in this country over the last few decades. Every single time there's a coalition among political parties against the PNM is they lose. The only time the PNM has ever lost and ever lose is when there is a coalition. In 1986, in 1995, in 2010 general election, and in 2010 local government election. Every single time there's not a coalition, the PNM will win. So the PNM always wins when there's not a coalition, except for one period, and that government only lasted a few months. So the data is there. So the question has to be asked. Sometimes people may object to what is happening. You need to understand that if there is not a coalition, that Keith Rowley's PNM would remain in government. Is that what we want? So we have to understand the bigger picture. Yes, so every political party may have different views, different principles, but let us look at the situation, what the country is undergoing at this time. And we're talking about coalition, not just within political parties against the PNM. Kamala Prasad-Bissessa and Gary Griffith, we both offered to work with the government to deal with a situation where they are totally lost in dealing with crime. It is the highest crime rate in the history of this country. And the man basically said, I do not want your help. I do not want to work with you. I do not care if the country drowns in blood. Practically, he could have said that. So let us not feel like, listen, we just decided to gang up on the PNM. That's not about it. The PNM have stated we win alone, we lose alone, and we'll let the country go down and drown alone. We are doing what is required to save Trinidad and Tobago. And that is the value and the importance of a coalition at this time.
The UNC is a well-known political brand. It's been around for several years. The NTA is the new kid on the block as it comes to elections. What does the NTA offer the coalition that has been formed?
That third constituency, that bridge constituency, it has always been there. And that's a perfect question. This started in 1981 under the ONR with 91,000 votes. It then moved on 10 years later to the NAR, name changed, 127,000 votes. 16 years later, or in 2007, under the Congress of the People, 147,000 votes. So 16 years later, it's now the NTA. And probably in 10, 15 years, it might be another set of initials. So regardless of whether you call it ONR, NAR, COP, NTA, ABC, XYZ, there will always be that group of independent persons, persons who may not be PNM till they die or born a UNC and will die a UNC. And there is nothing wrong with that. That is your right. But there's also the right of other persons to want to be on a party outside of the PNM or the UNC. And that is what the NTA brings to the table. We bring to the table that bridge constituency of those 150,000 odd voters, and jump high, jump low, whether persons like it or not, that for that group decides the outcome of every general election or local government election. If they go alone, what you call it, splitting the votes, which is what would have been seen in 81, 91, and 2007. If it is that they do not exist and it becomes a two-horse race, on most occasions the PNM will win, as in 2015 and 2020. If it is that they work with the UNC or the ULF, the major political force other than the PNM, you will see an annihilation of the PNM, such as 1986 general, 1995 general, 2010 general, and 2010 local government. So that is what the NTA brings to the table. That bridge constituency and that what we do dictates the pace of the outcome of the election.
Captain Griffith, you spoke about the ONR, you spoke about the COP, you spoke about these parties emerging to form a coalition and then defeating the PNM together. The reality is, however, that these parties also collapsed in a coalition. How do you respond to people who are concerned that any coalition that the NTA may be in, or any coalition that the UNC may be in, may eventually collapse?
Yeah, and nothing is guaranteed. But if it is you think that way, it means that no one should ever get married. No one should ever go and take an exam because there's a possibility you might fail. No one should ever go in an aircraft because you're not 100% sure you'll get there. So there's risk in everything in life. What we can state, however, is that let us not use this word coalition as something that is terrible. We have over 80 odd countries in the world, which is almost half of the countries in the world, that have had or presently have coalition governments. Over 30 in Europe, a dozen plus in Africa, in the Americas, in Asia, and many of them have worked. Some have not. But likewise, governments on their own have collapsed as well. Governments on their own have failed. And this present government is a perfect example because one of the disadvantages of a government standing on its own is that the individual who leads the government can become a dictator where no one can say anything or do anything. A coalition government puts checks and balances that can very well be of value to ensure that mistakes will not be made. These mistakes that would have been made in the past with coalition governments, I intend to rectify that because of one word, communication. If there's proper communication with the other political leaders, inclusive of that of the UNC, I can give the assurance, well, not the assurance, but I can virtually guarantee to a large extent that you're not going to see a repeat of what happened in 2010 and 2015. So people try to blame the UNC for it. I beg to differ. I was there. I think the hierarchy of the COP at the time should have done what was required to ensure that the representation of those 147,000 persons would have been secured and the persons would have been respected. There's going to be mutual respect this time around. There's going to be a great degree of dialogue. And because of that, if there's a lot of dialogue, communication, you're not going to get the mishaps that may have been seen in the People's Partnership government. So that is where it is you're going to see the difference.
In the People's Partnership Administration or the People's Partnership Arrangement, the UNC had some seats and some ministerial positions. The COP had some seats and ministerial positions. And there was also this institution called the Chairman's Council, which was a meeting of the five chairmen of the political parties. There was the Political Leaders Council, which was a meeting of the political leaders of the five parties. And despite those high-level mechanisms that were formed, we all know the result of that coalition. You're speaking about communication. How will your approach to communication be different this time around if such high-level mechanisms didn't work in the past?
Excellent. Again, and what I'm using is the template of 1983. I wasn't involved in politics anywhere near then.
Well, I was going to ask if you were around to begin with.
No, I wasn't around. neither 86. But in 1983, based on history, based on me doing research, is that at that time with the ONR, after the ONR realized, look, we got 91,000 votes, we didn't get a seat. Something is wrong, and it's because of how the Constitution was drafted to ensure that third parties will be annihilated because of you do not want to have that proportional representation. So what they realized is that the best way for that bridge constituency to be relevant is to have some type of accommodation with the then ULF, which then became the UNC. And by doing that, the ONR selected specific seats. The ULF kept their seats in Central and South. And with that, you saw that type of arrangement that ended up to cause that success. So I looked at that template, and that was the foundation that laid towards the NAR in 1986. So what I'm doing now, and what we're doing, is the difference with what happened in 2010. It was knee-jerk. Patrick Manning called a snap election. Some of these political parties were caught off guard. We're not doing that this time around. So basically that Faizabad Accord, it may have been a quick political marriage of convenience, and because of that there would have been gaps in the structure. Now we have time, and we are going to make sure that the structure is set in such a way, and that is what happened again in 1983 when they had that local government election. It set the framework to realize, hey, this could work, because the PNM lost several seats that they never lost before in local government because of that type of accommodation. And from 83 to 86, a proper platform was being drafted and built to ensure that something would work. So, and that didn't happen in 2010. 2010, bam, you just call a snap election, and 3 months you have to rush get people together, amalgamate persons, call something a vice code. That is not going to happen this time around. In fact, what we are doing as we speak, even though there is the local government election, I am looking to meet with many of the other political leaders of the other parties who have similar type of thinking towards unifying the country. There are one or two political parties that they are no different to the PNM. They spend all of their time attacking, destroying, discrediting people. Those are the type of political parties and people we do not want, because then you are no different to the PNM. I'm sure you know who we're speaking about. We want parties that are here to unite, to build, to embrace, not to divide and to destroy and to attack and to undermine. Hearing political leaders like that speak, it is why the country is the way it is right now. That is what caused the hate and division. So building that platform, I intend to meet with these other political parties, embrace them. That is why the name of our party is the National Transformation Alliance. It's an alliance not just of persons with a party card, but an alliance of similar minds who have specific principles. And by doing that, we are bringing these parties not to work under us or for us, but with us. And that now is going to expand and build something so powerful. It will have a proper foundation to ensure you're not going to see a repeat of what happened with the People's Partnership in 2015 when they lost, and even with the NAR. And may I just quickly add, that is why it is the type of individuals you have in the National Transformation Alliance. When Keith Rowley tried to fool the country with his slate of candidates, how powerful they are, it can never end the NTA. We just have 31 candidates. And of the 31 candidates, when you look at the aldermen and possible mayors we have a previous Attorney General and a previous person who was the ambassador for the United Kingdom. We have two previous PNM aldermen. We have somebody who was the goalkeeper for the national men's hockey team for 2 decades. We have the goalkeeper for the national Soca Warriors football team for over 6 years. We have the previous captain of the national men's football team and the previous coach of the national women's senior team. We have the last person who scored a hat-trick for Trinidad and Tobago in a senior, in an international game that was rated against Mexico, that was rated as the best football game ever seen in the Gold Cup. We have an individual who was a national under 14, under 20, under 23 player, kidney donors. We have a 3-time extempo champion. So that's the type of quality we bring to the table. Persons who are well versed in community development, in arts, in culture, in sport, in entertainment. These are the things and factors that develop a community, which again, we have ministries in this government that cannot do it. So we are actually going to do it at a community level through local government and youth. So imagine what we're going to do when we get in government.
Captain Griffith, might I invite you to stay with us on the line for just a brief moment as we do our time check, because it is 7:30 in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And that time check was brought to you with the compliments of KY's Electrical Supplies Limited.
KY's Electrical Supplies Limited of Southern Main Road, Cunupia, for all your electrical and plumbing supplies, water heaters, filters, and water pumps, plus all parts for Goulds, Pentax, Leo pumps, and your complete electrical needs. You can choose from leading brands such as Cooper, Valma, BTCino, Leviton, and General Electric. Remember, visit KY's Electrical Supplies Limited of Southern Main Road, Cunupia, or call 665-6954.
Welcome back to the People's Platform. Our guest this morning, Captain Gary Griffith, the political leader of the NTA, the National Transformation Alliance. Captain Griffith, thank you for staying on the line with us. You mentioned so many things in your remarks thus far. One of the things that I noticed you said in the media is that the PNM is the enemy, and removing the PNM is the enemy.
No, I did not. I didn't say that. What I said, I would not, listen, I was a military officer. I was trained in the best military academy in the world. I know what an enemy is. An enemy is when I was in the United Kingdom and we had to look under our vehicles because of bombs being placed by the IRA. The enemy would be those when I was in the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Haiti and we were trying to preserve democracy. The enemy is when I came back from the United Kingdom. I was the youngest officer to serve to protect democracy in our country in the attempted coup. That is what the enemy is. No politician can be the enemy. When I hear politicians speak, that is because they never had a gun pointed at you or shots being fired at you. The enemy would be those persons who kill, who rape, who kidnap, who are terrorists, who are enemies of the state. Politicians are not that. They are political opponents, no more, no less. So Keith Rowley is definitely not the enemy. What he is a great liability to the country. What I also said is that I wish to thank Keith Rowley because of his hatred, his arrogance, his division, his bitterness. He has become the catalyst to unify the other political parties because of his hatred. So I wish to thank him for it. So I never stated that he was the enemy. I just want to clarify that.
Well, thank you for that clarification. It brings me to the point that you would have alluded to, the catalyst for people coming together. There are persons who will be in very much support of Captain Gary Griffith emerging on the political scene. There are persons who will be mindful of Gary Griffith's political history. He was a minister under the UNC People's Partnership Administration. He was a former senior member of the Bazio Panley household when he was Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And by and large, Gary Griffith has had an association or a membership or an affiliation with the UNC. How do you respond to those people who may be thinking this morning, listen, Gary united with the UNC is just Gary going back home?
Well, again, the good thing about it is that I asked the country to remember Gary Griffith offered to help Keith Rowley, and that's the difference with Keith Rowley and Kamala Prasad-Bissessar. One looks at the bigger picture of what is right for the country. One is so caught up in the ideologies of, unless you're PNM, you're the enemy. I offered my services. I said, I am willing to help you, regardless of all the evil things that he would have done to me and targeting me. And we're talking about state resources being used to tap my phones, to look into my FIU accounts, him hiring civilians, paying them big money to write reports that were filled with misinformation. So he wanted to go to Parliament, which is the one place you could lie with reports and not be sued, similar to Emailgate. After all of that, I still was mature enough to understand the bigger picture, that the country is drowning in blood. In my last year, it was the lowest number of murders in 17 years. 1 year after I left, it is the highest number of murders in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. And it had to do with the difference in leadership and the hundreds of policies that were shut down. I offered to help Keith Rowley, and he said, I do not care. I do not want you. I do not want your help. So let us not be fooled that Gary just automatically ran to the UNC. I offered to help Keith Rowley. He refused. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar is a different individual. She can embrace persons outside of the UNC, and it shows the difference in the political maturity of Kamala Prasad-Bissessar to Keith Rowley, which is why I would always say you cannot expect to lead a country if arguably you hate half of the country.
How do you respond in speaking of the political maturity of Kamala Prasad-Bissessar? You are joining with the UNC, or your party is in a coalition or an alliance with the UNC, with several UNC members having left the party recently. Do you see that as a liability to the overall coalition arrangement?
No, not at all. But listen, you know the thing about people leaving the party, if it is that you're not going to get renewed as a councillor, and you defect because you're so busy for a work, or you were always an acting senator, and since 2020 you were not reappointed as an acting senator, so you cry like a little baby to go across to another party. That shows the individuals, the character of the individuals. That has nothing to do to show the weakness of a political party. So you have 141 candidates every 3 years you select for local government. You have 59 persons who are councillors. And you decide to make changes to say, okay, right, I would like, your time has come to an end, I would like somebody else. And you feel because of that, you feel you are entitled to that position. And then by doing that, you decide to defect. That doesn't show weakness of the political party. That shows the immaturity of the individuals who badly need a work in local parlance. So this has nothing to do with the UNC being weakened because these individuals left. In the same manner, I have two persons who were previous PNM councillors and very powerful, well-respected individuals in society. Now, those individuals didn't defect. They left, and then years later, now they have joined and they are part of the NTA. Big difference. These individuals we speak about, immediately as they were told by the UNC, well, we're no longer going to nominate you, but we wish you the best and we like you on board. And you cry like a baby and you run to the next thing. When those same individuals, they're going to do the same thing to the PNM. And when you have those individuals that cannot be trusted and you really do not need them. So good luck with the PNM on them, on those individuals.
Let's get to the issue of the arrangements that have been made. The NTA is fielding 31 candidates. The UNC is fielding a number of candidates on their own. What corporations would we expect to see NTA candidates in?
Right. So what usually happens is that we have seen that whether it was the ULF, Club 88, the UNC, there's a strong, powerful support base in central and southern Trinidad. And so the UNC will keep the priority of those seats. and those corporations. The corridor from Diego Martin, Port of Spain, Sawa, Laventille, Tunapuna, Arima, and then also Point Fortin. Those 6 corporations presently held by the PNM would be the focus of the NTA. So we will have the majority of those seats, and that's where we will put the focus on. And again, it's typical, basic strategy. It's very tactical because the PNM's game plan, if you want to look at it from Arts of War, if it is that you want to take a certain land, a certain area, you put all your resources there if you're comfortable that everything else is secure. And that's what the PNM, their game plan was, to put all of their resources and finance into Sangre Grande to try to take that corporation from the UNC and to make sure they keep San Fernando. Because of this now, back at the ranch now, they have to look at their rear echelon and understand, wait a minute, because of what Gary has done, the NT, I should say, has done, is that similar to what happened in 2010, when that 147,000 joined with the 197,000 UNC supporters, they were able to take Diego Martin, take Arima, take Tunapuna, take San Fernando, and take some seats from Port of Spain. So now they have to extract a number of their resources from their initial game plan of the focus of those 2 corporations to make sure that they do not lose those corporations, which is what took place in 2010. 2010 was 11-3 in corporations, and now it's 7-7. The 4 additional corporations would have been, as I said, Diego Martin, Tunapuna, Arima, and San Fernando. So now the PNM is in panic mode. They cannot pump all of their hundreds of millions of dollars into Sangre Grande and San Fernando. And may I add that we intend to also support the UNC candidates in San Fernando, especially those 2 candidates that are going for the seats barely won by the PNM by less than a couple hundred votes last time. And if the UNC wins those seats, PNM will lose San Fernando. So it is very tactical. It is very strategic. The PNM have been in panic mode over the last 96 hours. When you hear Keith Rowley is going to St. James of all places, he doesn't go to St. James to have political meetings, but they are concerned because that is where they lost those seats as well in 2010 based on this strategic alliance. So in a nutshell, Central and Southern corporations, it's Kamala versus Rowley. In the corridor, it's Gary versus Rowley.
In the corridor, are there any corporations in which there will be some seats contested by the UNC and some seats by the NTA, or will it be totally NTA candidates?
No, I think it was very important for the UNC to maintain a hold in every corporation to avoid the old talk by certain people at the UNC they have abandoned a corporation or they abandoned their supporters. So, for example, Diego Martin, there will be 8 out of the 10 seats. 8 will be the NTA, 2 will be UNC. In Point Fortin, 5 NTA, 1 UNC. In Port of Spain and Sawa, Laventille shared virtually equal. Tunapuna, we got 4. Arima, we got 2 out of the 7. So it is shared in a very strategic way, and obviously there will be a degree of a working relationship. And even though we have different political parties and we have different things in our plans, as it pertains to this election, it is very strategic, and we will be working hand in hand.
Political scientist Professor Hamid Ghani wrote an article recently. Yeah. I'm sure you would have read the article. In that article, he says that while the NTA and the UNC alliance or coalition may be welcomed by some, he foresees a challenge when it comes to aldermen, because the election or the appointment of aldermen is dependent on proportional representation. So if, for example, in one corporation, the UNC has X number of votes, the NTA has an X number of votes, how do you intend to resolve the issue of who becomes the alderman?
Yeah, and I read the article. He's one of the few political analysts that really is usually spot on, and he is correct. It is really a weird system that was set up. It is not in the best interest of any party outside of the 2 major parties, but so be it. What we are doing is we are not putting so much focus on the aldermen in those PNM corporations that are held, but putting focus on winning the seats. So it's a give and take. We are going to, if it is that we have to sacrifice the loss of an alderman or 2 for the importance of making sure that we win the seats, so be it. We rather win the seats and lose an alderman than to say, well, let's just give one party all of the whole corporation to ensure you win the alderman. The priority is, because at the end of the day, there are 3 factors the country is going to look at to see who wins and loses this election. 3: the number of corporations, the number of seats, and the number of votes. At this time, it is 7-7 in corporations, equal. At this time, the UNC got more votes than the PNM. So the UNC could say, well, they won. But then the PNM has more seats than the UNC. Those are the 3 things that the country is going to pick up. They are not going to look at the results based on the number of aldermen that either any party has. So if it is that we do this properly, I think the PNM may have 5 more seats presently than the UNC. If it is that the NTA just picks up those 5 extra seats and go a little more, PNM would have lost in seats, in votes, and hopefully by taking San Fernando in corporations. That is the focus, not so much as the win or loss of an alderman.
And Captain Griffith, as we end our time this morning, there's one more question that I'd like to pose to you. People are looking at the fact that this is our coalition arrangement towards local government elections, and we are 2 years away from a general election. People are saying that, well, if the coalition works out now, maybe our coalition will work. Then is it your intention to be part of a coalition with the UNC come the next general election? And if so, how do you respond to the concern that keeping this coalition arrangement together within the next year and even the following year after that, between 2024 and 2025, before the next general election, will be a challenge for the NTA and the UNC?
Right, perfect. Last question. And again, I go back to the 1983 model in the local government, how it was used, which is exactly what we are looking at now. I looked at it carefully, and that because you had 3 years, it built the template to unite the country, never seen before, even more than the People's Partnership. It was 33-3. The PNM, they were annihilated. So, and that is the problem we had in 2010. There was that massive Tamla mania. But the structure for a proper strategic system of the unification of parties, it was a rush job through the Pfizer Accord. And that is why this time around, because you have the local government now, through the strategic arrangement, it gives us enough time to strategize and make sure we can plan and prepare properly to prevent any fragmentation that may take place when we become in government as a united force of different political parties. And I think because of that, that is why this, as I said, this is the mother of all local government elections. If and when Keith Rowley is defeated, it will be a second consecutive major defeat at the polls nationally. And if that happens, he's going to do just like Patrick Manning. He's going to press the panic button because he's going to realize this unification that took place in 83 that went on into 86. I can't wait until this builds to have such a powerful foundation. He may very well call an early election, so it may not be 2 years.
We have been speaking with Captain Gary Griffith, the political leader of the National Transformation Alliance. Captain Griffith, I want to thank you very much for the time that you spent with us this morning and the thoughts you've shared on these very critical and emerging issues.
My pleasure, anytime.